Dolmabahce Palace. Located in the Beşiktaş district of Istanbul, Turkey. On the European coast of the Bosporus Strait, served as the main administrative center of the Ottoman Empire. From 1856 to 1887 and from 1909 to 1922. Yıldız Palace was used in the interim period. Dolmabahce Palace was ordered by the empire's 31st Sultan, 1st Abdulmecid. And built between the years 1843 and 1856. Previously, the Sultan and his family had lived at the Topkapı Palace. But as the medieval Topkapı was lacking in contemporary style, luxury, and comfort, as compared to the palaces of the European monarchs, Abdulmecid decided to build a new modern palace near the site of the former Beşiktaş Palace, which was demolished. Haçi said Akka was responsible for the construction works, while the project was realized by architects Garabet Beylian, his son Nigaweos Beylian, and Devanis Kalfa, members of the Armenian Beylian family of Ottoman court architects. The construction cost 5 million Ottoman gold lira, or 35 tons of gold, the equivalent of core $1.9 billion in today's gold values. This sum corresponded to approximately a quarter of the yearly tax revenue. Actually, the construction was financed through debasement, by massive issue of paper money, as well as by foreign loans. The huge expenses placed an enormous burden on the state purse and contributed to the deteriorating financial situation of the Ottoman Empire, which eventually defaulted on its public debt in October 1875. With the subsequent establishment in 1881 of financial control over the sick man of Europe by the European powers. The palace was home to 6 sultans from 1856, when it was first inhabited, up until the abolition of the Caliphate in 1924. The last royal to live here was Caliph Abdulmecid Effendi. A law that went into effect on March 3, 1924, transferred the ownership of the palace to the national heritage of the new Turkish Republic. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder and first president of the Republic of Turkey, used the palace as a presidential residence during the summers and enacted some of his most important works here. Atatürk spent the last days of his medical treatment in this palace, where he died on November 10, 1938. Today, the palace is managed by Milli Bourkamukik Directorate of National Palaces, responsible to the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. The site of Dolmabahce was originally a bay on the Bosporus, which was used for the anchorage of the Ottoman fleet. The area was reclaimed gradually during the 18th century to become an imperial garden, much appreciated by the Ottoman sultans. It is from this garden that the name Dolmabahce, filled in garden, comes from the Turkish dolma, meaning filled, and bahçe, meaning garden. Various small summer palaces and wooden pavilions were built here during the 18th and 19th centuries. Ultimately forming a palace complex named Bewiktak Waterfront Palace. The area of 110,000 square meters is confined by Bosporus on the east side. While a steep precipice bounds it on the west side, such that after the building of the new 45,000 square meters monoblock, Dolmabahce Palace, a relatively limited space, has remained for a garden complex which would normally surround such a palace. Dolmabahce is the largest palace in Turkey. It has an area of 45,000 square meters, 11.1 acres, and contains 285 rooms, 46 halls, 6 baths, hammam, and 68 toilets. The design contains eclectic elements from the Baroque, Rococo, and Neoclassical styles, blended with traditional Ottoman architecture to create a new synthesis. The palace layout and decor reflect the increasing influence of European styles and standards on Ottoman culture and art during the Tanzimat period. The exterior, in particular the view from the Bosporus, shows a classical European two-wing arrangement which is divided by a big avant-course, with two-side avant-course. Functionally, on the other hand, the palace retains elements of traditional Ottoman palace life. And also features of traditional Turkish homes. It is strictly separated structurally in a southern wing, Mabeyn-i Hümayun, or Selamlık, the quarters reserved for the men, which contains the public representation rooms, and a northern wing, Harem-i Hümayun, the harem serving as the private residential area for the Sultan and his family. The two functional areas are separated by the big ceremonial hall, Muid Salonu, with a floor area of 2,000 square meters, 22,000 square feet, and a 36 meters, 118 feet high dome. Since the harem had to be completely isolated from the outside world, the main entrance for the visitors is located on the narrow southern side. There, the representation rooms are arranged for receptions of visitors and of foreign diplomats. The harem area includes 8 interconnected apartments for the wives of the Sultan, for his favorites and concubines, and for his mother, each with its own bathroom. Whereas the Topkapı Palace has exquisite examples of Iznik tiles and Ottoman carving, the Dolmabahce Palace is extensively decorated with gold and crystal. "14 tons of gold were used to gild the ceilings. Over 100 kilograms of gold was used to decorate the palace. This weight today costs $6 million United States dollars. The world's largest Bohemian crystal chandelier is in the ceremonial hall. It has 750 lamps and weighs 4.5 tons. The chandelier was originally assumed to have been a gift from Queen Victoria in 2006, however. A receipt was discovered showing it had been paid for in full by the Sultan. Dolmabahce has the largest collection of Bohemian and Baroque crystal chandeliers in the world. The famous crystal staircase has the shape of a double horseshoe. And is built of Baroque crystal, brass and mahogany. Expensive stones such as Marmara marble, Egyptian alabaster and porphyry from Pergamon were used for the decoration. The palace includes a large number of Herrick palace carpets, made by the Herrick Imperial Factory. The Herrick carpet featured in the main hall happens to be the largest Herrick rug in the world. Also featured are 150-year-old bearskin rugs, originally presented to the Sultan as a gift by Tsar Nicholas I. A collection of 200 oil paintings is on display in the palace. A highlight of the collection are 23 paintings by Ivan Ayvazovsky, which he created as a court painter during his stays in Istanbul. The collection also includes paintings by Gustav Ballinger, Jean-Leon Gérôme, Eugene Fromentin, Stanisław Lebowski, Felix Ziem, Karl Joseph Kowalczyk, Forster Zonaro, Theo van Risselberg and Alexander Sanders Svoboda. There are also paintings by Turkish painters, such as Osman Hamdi Bey, Halil Pasha and Osman Nuri Pasha in this art museum. From the very beginning, the palace's equipment implemented the highest technical standards. Gas lighting and water closets were imported from Great Britain, whereas the palaces in continental Europe were still lacking these features at that time. Later, electricity, a central heating system and an elevator were installed. A visit to the Dolmabahce Palace begins at the Meadow Hall. Rooms leading off the Meadow are towards the sea and the land. The rooms facing the sea were used by the leading Ottoman officials, the Grand Vizier and the other state ministers. While the rooms facing the land were used by various administrators of the palace and the state, such as the Palace Marshal, Zeylislam, and members of the House of Representatives Meclisi Mebuzin and the Senate Meclisi Ayan. Guests would first wait in this hall, and then would be led inside at the proper time by a palace protocol officer. On entering the Med Hall, one sees ball tables on both sides of the room, which bear the monogram of Sultan Abdulmecid on top. The royal monogram of the Sultan is also on the fireplace. The English chandelier hanging in the middle of this room has 60 arms. The herrick fabrics used as upholstery for the furniture and as drapers are in the royal shade of red. Atatürk's ruler Mustafa Kemal Atatürk spent the last days of his life in the palace as his health deteriorated. He died at 9:05 a.m. on November 10, 1938, in a bedroom located in the former harem area of the palace. All the clocks in the palace were stopped and set to 9:05 after his death. The clocks outside of his room now are set to the actual time in Turkey. But the clock in the room in which he died still points to 9:05. The harem was a traditional feature of many Middle Eastern architectural structures throughout history. The point of Abdulmecid's construction of the harem was to ensure there were separate quarters built for the royal family and their leisure. It was common practice for the Sultan's personal concubines to reside within the harem. Rooms meant to house and educate the children of the Sultan, as well as the Sultan's own living quarters, are included in what would be considered the harem. Usually most sultans beforehand had restricted their wives and concubines from being in the public. However, Abdulmecid unprecedentedly allowed them to leave the palace to shops and bazaars under supervision.